I wouldn't sacrifice what you believe in for the business. I would take the business, use it as a business, as a tool, and take what you can get from it.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interview.
Our first guest has been wrestling for only about 10 months now and has been trained by some names like Lance Storm, Brian Kendrick, and Seth Rollins, which we'll definitely get into. Please welcome Nasty Nic Nolan.
What's up, man? Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. Really, I can't wait to jump into your career so young, too. It'd be cool to get it at the start. And our next guest is a veteran in the wrestling business. You might have seen him in WCW, WWE, or you might have even had a motorcycle built or repaired by him. Please welcome Chuck Palumbo.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I said at the beginning, Chuck, so obviously you rode a motorcycle to the ring at some point, but I don't know how many people are aware that you actually build them and repair them in all types of automobiles, right? Do you still do that?
Absolutely. Yep. I have a shop. We do car builds, truck builds, motorcycles, stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice. And do you still, I saw it was about 2 years ago you posted to the Chuck of All Trades YouTube channel. Do you still keep up with that, or?
I haven't I've been so busy, man, with the shop. I want to, I just haven't had the time. We want to continue it hopefully in the future when we get some time, but right now I'm trying to catch up on projects in the shop. So
No, absolutely. What is like the coolest bike? I mean, I know you've probably done so many. What most custom job or something? I've actually never even been on a motorcycle, so I don't really know how to ask that question. Yeah. But what do you?
I think I'm a client gives you kind of free reign,
yeah,
to do anything you want. So any of those builds are always great. And then obviously when you start from scratch with a build, making the chassis, making all the parts for it. I think when everything's handmade, it's just, there's an artistic flair to it. It's satisfying, So, yeah, anything completely hand built. And again, a lot of times it has a lot to do with what the budget is and what the customer's looking for. But I've been pretty fortunate over the last, I don't know, since like 06, 07. I was actually still wrestling when I started, started doing this. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid, but when I actually started doing it as a business, I've been pretty fortunate to have the same clientele who just want new stuff all the time. So there's usually about 10 or 12 or 13 guys who every few years want something different. So it's been nice,
That is really cool. Any wrestlers? Have you built bikes for wrestlers?
Yeah, early on I did. Dave, I did one for Dave Bautista early on. I did one for Chavo. I've done a few for Ray. I think I did 3 for Ray.
Nice.
Stereo. Shannon Moore. I did a bike for Shannon Moore. Yeah,
That's a cool one. Yeah. It's cool you're able to like blend the two industries. Nick, have you ever been on a motorcycle before?
Oh no, I'm too scared, to be honest. I'm too scared to get on one. I mean, I guess we've all seen or heard stories about, the horrors that come, along with that. And I mean, maybe once I'm done wrestling, because I am interested in jumping on one, but right now I can't risk it, So no, to answer the question, no, I haven't been on one, but I would eventually.
That's you're smart to think that way. Yeah. Right now, especially with all the distracted driving, there's a lot more risk, I feel, than there used to be. But yeah, I'd stay off of, man, especially if you're just starting with wrestling. You get hurt, that's it, Yeah.
So, you already know it's so easy to get hurt wrestling, and outside of wrestling, you just get up wrong, and oh shit, there's my back, my shoulder, So I try to avoid anything anything physical besides going to the gym and wrestling, because you already know how fragile your body is when you wrestle. Any extra stuff, I take a time out on, pass for now.
Yeah, that's smart, man.
Smart, definitely. Well, Nick, I want to start at the very beginning of your journey here and just hear how it is that you got into wrestling. What led you to it?
Oh man, the very beginning. Yeah. We're going back to my very first memory of wrestling I must have been 4, 5 years old, and my dad was watching it. And the only thing I remember was Undertaker, Yokozuna. The ropes were red, white, and blue. And the Undertaker, I don't know if we can, I don't want to use profanity, or he scared the hell out of me.
Oh.
And that was the very first memory I've had of wrestling. And from that point on, I didn't watch it until I was about 12, 13, because my dad was like, hey, SmackDown's in Madison Square Garden. Do you want to go? Hell no, I don't want to go. But then I was like, you know what? That's an opportunity for me to spend time with my dad. So I called him back about 2 minutes later, and I was like, you know what? I'll go. So I went to SmackDown, and this, I think it was like July 27th, or it aired on July 27th, 2003, somewhere around there. So Chuck might have been on that. But I remember it was the whole segment with Mr. America, who I did not know was Hulk Hogan. Spoiler alert, by the way, if you didn't know that. Because I didn't know who Hulk Hogan was.
Okay, yeah, then fair. Yeah.
So I see this guy, and this is the episode of SmackDown. I don't think this made air, but Vince was walking around the ring with a cane, and he flung it into the crowd, and it hit some kid. And they brought the kid back. Like, I see the kid getting ushered into the back with security. He comes back with all these bags and shirts hanging all over him and stuff. But so what made me want to do this was, ironically enough, because of the people that I wound up looking up to professionally. It was the same person that did it for them. It was Hulk Hogan. So I distinctly remember at the end of the show, this might have been his last appearance before he came back in 2005. They played the Hulk Hogan music. He was doing the pose and all that. And then he lifted up his mask. And I don't know if you can see it, but I have chills right now just thinking about it. And I remember looking off to the right, and the building, Madison Square Garden, was shaking, literally shaking. And I remember looking at my dad, and then looking at Hulk Hogan. And it's like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm 13 years old. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it,
Right.
but this is what I want to do. And there's only been two times in my life where I felt that electricity. It was that night. And then I was actually at WrestleMania 28 when The Rock beat John Cena in Miami. Same thing. The building was rocking.
Yep.
And it was an outdoor, it was a football stadium. So for it to rock takes a lot more than, a confined space. But, watching Hulk Hogan do his thing there, knowing that's what I wanted to do, not knowing how I would do it, I told my dad when I was leaving, hey, Dad, I want to be a wrestler. Okay, sure, son. That's a great idea. Probably thought I was going to grow out of it. And here I am 20 years later, still doing it.
That's awesome. Man, I love how detailed the memories are too. You could tell it's
weird. It's weird.
It's weird, but those are big moments. Those like important moments in life. Chuck, I'd like to throw it to you because I've heard that you weren't as much of an avid fan as Nick just described, and that you really just like answered an ad. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what happened. I didn't really know. I mean, I'd seen wrestling maybe in passing a couple times on Saturdays. It's back, I think, when WWF had a Saturday show or something. So I kind of knew who Hulk Hogan was. Never actually watched the show, but I knew it existed. But that's all I really remember about wrestling, until the point where I actually just saw an ad on television for the PowerPlant, WCW PowerPlant, which was probably, it must have been 96, 97. And I just called the number. And honestly, it was just, I was just looking for an opportunity to make some money. I was playing basketball in college, and knew I wasn't going to play in the NBA. Figured I was going to end up playing overseas or something like that, which really didn't interest me. So when I just happened to see the ad on television for the power plant, there was a phone number, and it said something to the effect of, if you want to be a wrestler, call this number, or train where the big boys train.
Yeah.
WCW PowerPlant. I think on the second page of the ad, it said something about if you make it through the camp, there's a chance you may receive a 6-figure contract. So I think being in my, mid-20s and seeing the 6-figure contract thing, kind of, I got excited and said, shit, maybe I can do this,
Yeah.
So then after that, I started watching it just to, kind of figure out what was going on with it. And then I think a month later, I was in a tryout down in Atlanta at the PowerPlant. And even at that point, honestly, I didn't know how much was a work, how much wasn't. I knew nothing. I didn't know anybody who ever wrestled. I knew nothing about the business. I didn't know anything, anything about it. Which maybe was a good thing at the time. I was naive and I was willing to just, try to get that contract. And ultimately it worked out. I got the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And not having any like prior experience or even like a lot of knowledge in like the wrestling business, do you remember what your thoughts were like seeing? Because wrestling could be such a crazy place. We've heard the stories and everything. Like walking in there, were you freaked out, or were you kind of like, all right, I can do this? Like,
I was definitely on alert. Do you know what I mean? Because I remember it was like Sarge, Buddy Lee Parker, Sarge, and Jody Hamilton. I want to say maybe Hardbody Harrison was down there. There was a handful of guys who had made it through previous tryouts, who were trying to break into business, who were training there, and just taking bumps and running the ropes, just basic stuff when you know nothing about it. All that stuff, it's all new to you. So yeah, I was on high alert trying to figure it all out, but the power plant was a different scene. You've probably heard it from other people. It was basically a weeding out process. They didn't psychology, things like that really weren't taught there. It was more just learning how to bump and moves and training, and it was very paramilitary. So, but for me, it was the only way. I mean, there was no other way for me to break in, right? I mean, so it worked out. It worked out. But way different.
And to go to what it's like now, Nick, for you, your training. I mentioned the trainers that you had, like Lance Storm, Seth Rollins, and you said Brian Kendrick before we went on is your coach right now. What's the training like with those three? I mean, I'm sure you could talk for hours about it, but what do you think are some of those key things you took away from those three?
So my most recent coach that I worked with is Seth Rollins. I live in Iowa right now. But the thing with them, they're so unique in what they can offer. Like with Lance, who's my first like actual real coach, very technical. That's where I learned a lot of my technical wrestling, a lot of the basics. He's the best coach you can have for the basics. And he gets in there with you from day one, which is wild. And at the end of the class, we had about 3 weeks of matches. Everyone has a match with him, which is crazy. With Brian, and I tell this to everybody, he's the smartest person I've ever met psychology-wise for the business. He's so passionate about the business. I've never met anyone who's more passionate and willing to give for, especially the people he cares about. He's willing to give you the shirt off of his back if you need it. And that's something that I don't take lightly, because I've seen, when he doesn't care, he does not care. But when he does care, he will do everything in his power to help you. And he's one I talk to very often because I'm really trying to master the psychology, and he's learned from Shawn, Regal, Benoit, all these guys who legends in the business who pass down their knowledge to him. But the way he processes things and he explains it to me, it just clicks for me. And I love his style, especially his last run in WWE, which is, to be honest, how I tailor a lot of my work, because that makes sense to me. Before I moved to Iowa, I would go to his house just about every Tuesday, sit down on his couch, and we would watch wrestling, and he would put the most obscure stuff on. He'll find a random match from France in 1947 that has 36 views, and we will watch that, and he explains, this is why this is good, this is why this is good, that's why you shouldn't do that. But what really, for me, helped me start understanding is actually watching his own stuff, which he doesn't like to do. But literally being able to ask him, what was your thought process with this? What was your thought process with that? Why are you doing this? Why are you outside of the ring telling Ibushi to come out? You know, things like that. And then once he explains it that way, then that's when the gears start going. And the psychology is, in my opinion, the most important thing, because if you can invest people emotionally, they're going to spend money on tickets, they're going to come want to see you work. And you don't have to do anything crazy, because they're just emotionally invested. And then with Seth Rollins, I send him all my matches also. And him and Brian are the most honest people. You know, both of them have literally said, that match is the fucking shits. I never want to watch it again. And, you know, on one hand, it's like, damn, like, this is Seth Rollins. This guy's a world heavyweight champion now, telling me I suck. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, what can I do to get better? What can I do to improve? And then when you have someone at that level telling you, you should try this, try that, try the other thing, and then you go out there and you try it and it works, that's when you start making leaps and bounds and just really starting to get better a lot quicker, as opposed to trying it yourself. And he's really helped a lot with the performance aspect of the wrestling for me, which I still am working on. I'm always going to be working on something, but you know, he's the entertainer. He's the showman. I mean, what you see on Raw is, you know, some of the very best character work that you'll see ever. So he really does help in regards to the performance aspect of when to listen to the crowd, when to do this, when to try that. So, I mean, they all bring something very unique to the table. I've been fortunate enough to train with all of them.
The psychology that you were mentioning, like, that's huge that you're able to learn that. Chuck, can I get your thoughts on the psychology and everything? Like, did you learn that early in the power plant, or was that more of just like you said, weeding out, like learning the moves and stuff, and the psychology come later? Like, where did that come?
Yeah, the psychology came in front of people. So what we would do is we train at the power plant during the week, and on the weekends on our own, we would do small independent shows around the greater Atlanta area, VFW halls, stuff like that, working in front of 30 people. That's where we started to learn the psychology. Me personally, I got brought up to TV so fast that I actually had to start learning it on TV. It was challenging because, you know, TV matches are 3 to 7, 8 minutes. So very hard to tell a story in that limited amount of time. So it took time for me to learn it. But I had to learn it basically on WCW Saturday Night, and then, Thunder and the Monday Night Show and Monday Nitro. And so it took some time. But yeah, less is more, right? You're going to hear that from a lot of the older guys, but less is more. Keeping it simple is more. I mean, the big thing is, good and evil, right? You got a good heel or a great heel. You got a great baby face, a heel who can really generate heat, can do things with intensity. He can be vicious. He can really get the audience to sympathize with the baby face. And then once you get that, you got a baby face who can really sell, can really kind of show his true emotion out there, sell, show people he's in pain. You know what I mean? Show people he has heart, show people he has fire when that's, when it's time for that. Those are the two big things, Character, you never know what's going to happen with a character. You may work on something, which is great, and then once you get to Vince or, WWE, whatever, that's not what they want you doing, But if you work more towards the, the heel aspect or the babyface aspect and the fundamentals of those aspects, that's where it's at, And then, the other thing is going back to less is more is just, you get a handful of moves to use, knowing when to use those moves, right? There's a lot of guys in the industry, and I even, I don't watch it now really, but every once in a while, you come by on an Instagram video or something. There's a lot of guys out there who can't throw a meaningful punch, one meaningful punch. And on the other side of it, the babyface can't sell that punch, So, I mean, it starts that simple. A simple boot, a simple punch, the way you grab a hold, the facial expressions, everything has to be very meaningful, But I think, it's more about that. Movesets, I mean, yeah, they're important. I know the business has changed, obviously, and the guys are doing a lot more high spots and a lot more acrobatic type of moves. But I really think it comes down to just the good, the evil, the babyface, the heel, and making it believable. You know what I mean? Because it's really quite simple. Right? I think a lot of times we end up overthinking it, especially when you're young in the industry. It's not because it's just because you're so excited, you're so excited to learn, you're so excited to be a part of it, you're so excited to be there in the game, in the ring. You want to show them everything. But I think if you focus on those little things, especially early on, and make everything meaningful, I think that's where it's at,
Somebody who I've heard you say, Chuck, helped you early on in your career, in your WCW career, was Scott Steiner. And I think you still have a good friendship with him, last I heard.
Yeah.
Did he give you any specific advice in the beginning, kind of help you learn maybe that psychology?
Yeah, basically what I was just speaking about, basically talking about keeping it simple. There's going to be times, obviously, for the high spots, but basically he said, make it meaningful, keep it simple, and then when it's time to, show them your athleticism and stuff, you do it at the right time, But that was big. Obviously Scott's big on intensity,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, another guy who was extremely helpful with me early on was Kurt Hennig.
Oh yeah.
And he was basically the same way. He was one of the best athletes that the business has ever seen, right? Yeah, he thought the same way. Listen to the audience, and when it's time, show them what you got. Yeah, I was very fortunate early on, even in WCW, where I was still super green. Even when I left there and went to Vince, the WWF, I was still green.
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate to get paired up with Billy Gunn later on, who taught me a lot. But I was very fortunate in WCW where I was around, Randy Savage, Hulk, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Steiners, Scott Norton, all these different guys, Steven Regal, who had a ton of experience under their belt. And, it's funny because when I first started with them, me and other guys from the Power Plant, the Natural Born Thriller guys, we would always be like, man, these guys are always trying to tell us to slow down and, keep it simple. And we were almost like taking it like, man, they don't, they can't hang with us as far as the moves go. We kind of took it as an insult. But I soon learned that, wow, when you actually slow it down and you get the mileage out of everything, that's where it's at, and things are a lot easier, and your body will last a lot longer, So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what else to say. I mean, I think I covered.
Yeah, that's great advice. Chuck, there's one person in particular I wanted to ask you about in WCW. You just ran down a list of great names that you were around. This person is still going and just announced that they're going to retire soon, is Sting. And I'm wondering if you had any interactions with Sting while you were there. Any thoughts on Sting as like a locker room type leader back then?
Yeah, I didn't really hang out with Sting much. I mean, maybe, just backstage or whatever, maybe, hello and stuff. Sting, believe it or not, he's pretty quiet and to himself for the most part, or at least he was back then. I will say this: he was helpful. I remember when myself and the other, I call them the Thrillers, the guys from the Power Plant.
Yeah.
When we were doing certain things, he would definitely, chime in and try to give us advice. Sting's he's a very intelligent guy, obviously. Knew his character, never really swayed outside from his character, didn't have to, it worked. Good worker. Yeah, I mean, Sting's just been. It was nice to see him and how, just because here's the thing. A lot of times, like we think about just in ring work and stuff like that. And if you really think about it, Sting didn't do a lot, right?
Right.
He sold. He had good fire, but he didn't have to do a lot. And he had serious longevity, right? I mean, so those are the kind of things I kind of picked up from him, I guess, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as interacting with him, not a lot. He was kind of to himself. But when he saw us out there training or in the ring before a show or something, and he thought there was something that he could help us with, he would definitely chime in. And he was very helpful. So, and he's always a nice guy. Class act. The way he carried himself. He's a professional.
Yeah. No, definitely speaks to that longevity too that you're talking about with him still being in it. One more person I want to ask you about from the WCW days.
Sure.
Your on-screen coach. I'm curious if you learned anything backstage or any stories of Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash, great guy. So yeah, nothing as far as stories, nothing crazy. Kevin taught us. When I say us again, talking about the guys who come out of the power plant. Kevin taught us a lot about just the dynamic of being in the business, if that makes sense. Because there's so much more that goes into the business besides what's going on inside the ring and what the people see. There's a way to carry yourself backstage. There's a way to carry yourself in the locker room. There's a way to carry yourself when you travel. There's a way you carry yourself when you're at the hotel bar. And these things that might sound funny, but these are real things. Back then, I think it's a different group of guys now. I don't think they're hanging out at the hotel bar after the matches talking about wrestling. I think they probably go back to their room and get on the internet or do their social media stuff or whatever. And that's not a knock. It's a different world in a different time. But Kevin was that guy who almost taught us the street smarts of wrestling, if that makes
Yeah.
But a great guy to be around. One of the guys that he's very over in WCW at the time. They just they had the NWO not soon, not right before that. But he took us in and was a great teacher. And Kevin's another guy, right? People when you think about Kevin Nash, you don't think of him being this great worker, right? He'll tell you he had like 5 moves, and they all meant something. Again, a little different. You're talking about a 7-foot guy, not only 7 feet, but also a 7-foot guy in shape. But yeah, he just he got the business. And one thing he always stressed was, at the end of the day, it's still a business.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
as far as taking things personal and what you're doing out there, ultimately you got to make money, right? So, yeah, great guy. He's had some unfortunate things pop up in his life as of late.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. But I actually spoke with him not too long ago. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, great guy.
No, that's really cool. And to speak to the business, I think I heard Scott all say it's not show friends, it's show business. I think that was his line, but
yeah,
something like
I know Scott taught Kev a lot.
Oh,
and
that's
of course,
super cool. Yeah.
And they learned a lot together. Scott's another guy, big guy, athletic, but one heck of a worker, And again, didn't do much. But
it seems like
right?
a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, that's great.
Something to think about.
Definitely. Nick, I'm curious. So you were talking about Rhino. That's a huge match. Are there any other matches that someone who doesn't know Nasty Nic Nolan should go look at that you're proud of from your career so far?
Yeah, I mean, Off the top of my head, I had a good run with this kid named AMB, Austin Michael Baldridge. He was like my first real feud, and that kind of happened by accident. We kind of made it a thing. We made our own story. We had continuity in our matches. And that ended prematurely. But we do a lot of the same shows together, so it's only a matter of time before we meet again. But yeah, my matches with him I love. I'll be honest, I can't really watch my own stuff. You know, looking back at it, I feel it's cringe, you know, like I don't know why I did this. So I'm very critical, hypercritical of my own. But yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to check those out, and you know what, maybe one day if the stars align, I have that match with Seth Rollins you know, if I'm in WWE and they say, hey, you can upload it, yeah, I'll go for that. That's definitely one. Maybe 10 people have seen, the people who were in the building. That's one.
Was it filmed or?
Yeah. I recorded it on my phone. I know nice. The coaches. Yeah. So everyone recorded that shit. You know, like how often are you in the ring with someone like that? But that's one of those where, you know, when you're in there, you learn so much so quick. But I mean, if I had to say, I would say my matches with A and B are my favorite matches that I've had so far. Because when I send it to my coaches and they give me all this feedback, I look at them different after that. So I can't be like, hey, check this one out, check that one out, check the other one out. Yeah. Because I know that it's not up to standards that I hold for myself. So, but yeah, I mean, if people want to see it, I'm actually more for myself. I'm more proud of my promo work because I feel that's what puts asses in seats. And that's one of those things that's lost today. Like what Chuck was saying, you know, you don't really need to do too much. You know, it's not ironic because he has a punch. Like Chuck Palumbo's punch was one of those punches that was like, holy shit! I don't know if that's a work if he tagged him for real, but it was, you know, I might have potatoed a couple guys, but you know what? As long as you get your shit in, right? Like, who cares? But him and like Scott Hall, that's one person I didn't appreciate growing up, but watching Razor Ramon matches, Scott Hall, like his punch too. It's one of those things that just means so much, you know. And there's matches that I've watched. Who was it? It was Dusty Rhodes, and I want to say either like Tully Blanchard or Arn Anderson or something like that. It was a bull rope match, and the entire match, the heel was trying to punch Dusty. Or no, Dusty was trying to punch the heel, and the heel would cower or like hide behind the ref and like roll out of the ring. But when Dusty hit that one punch, the crowd lost their fucking mind. You know, like that's making the little things mean so much more. You can build a story with just hitting someone with a punch once, and that's going to get a bigger reaction than jumping off the balcony onto thumbtacks. You know, and there's some people that can do that, and it's great. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to put asses in seats. What people want to see is a story. They want to see Cody Rhodes beat Roman Reigns. That's taking 2 years to build up. So when he finally does it, if he does, it's going to be the biggest moment in the last 20 years. That's the story they're telling, because Roman's been champion for over 1,000 days. Now, if you're at a show and you see Ricochet do a 640 from in the ring to the third row, yeah, that's great. But I'm not paying to see that. I'm paying to see someone beat Roman Reigns. Yep. You know? So that's one of those things that for myself, I want to make less seem more, like what Chuck was saying. You know, you don't need a million moves. John Cena, he always gets flack for 5 moves of doom. Triple H, he has 5 moves. Stone Cold has 5 moves. The Rock has 5 moves. Randy Orton has 5 moves. And those guys with 5 moves have millions of dollars. You know, you don't need to do anything crazy in order to elicit a response like that. And they don't have a million moves. Like Rollins has told me himself, like he goes out there, he knows what the people want to see. They want to sing his song. He does the curb stomp, and everyone goes home happy. He doesn't need to do his flips. And yeah, he can pull it out once in a while if it fits the narrative, if it fits that story for a match. But he's working smarter, and he's making more money now than he ever has because the crowd is behind him.
He's on top. Yeah. It's so impressive to see what he's been able to turn it into and keep evolving too. And it's that entertainment, it's the promos that keeps you invested emotionally. And to transition now, Chuck, a point in your career when it was all about like the entertainment and what people probably know you best for was the Billy and Chuck angle. And I'd love to get into that. And just, first ask, like, how was it transitioning your career from more of like a serious, heavy for, FBI or like big guy in WCW to like something more entertaining like that?
Honestly, it was actually easy.
It was easy.
Well, once they give you a character, you just play it to the best of your ability. So I knew what they wanted, and I just took it and ran with it, So there was no like trying to figure out who I am, and this is the character that Vince was looking for. Take it and make it your own. So that's how that works. It was actually easy. If anybody ever goes back and watches any of those tag matches with Billy and I, we didn't do much. We really didn't do much. It was all entertainment and playing grab ass and innuendos and all that stuff. You know what I mean? That's what it really came down to. At the time, I've spoke with people about this before. At the time, it was cutting edge, right? Now, when we talk about same-sex marriage and gender-related topics, it's pretty, it's mainstream now, especially with social media and everything else. And but back then, it wasn't, right? So timing was right, obviously. And it was easy. We had fun doing it. We really did. We laughed about it. We would just laugh about it before we went to the ring, actually in the ring, and then back in the locker room after. We really had a lot of fun with it. And I learned a lot from Billy at the time. I learned a lot. So yeah, it was cool. Would it have been something that I would have chosen to do just out of the blue? No. But what we find out, right, just, not only in wrestling, but in life also, is when you're faced with something that's not in your wheelhouse, when you step out of the box to do something, usually you grow from it, and usually it turns out well. So yeah, it was a great time for me, great growing experience. I learned a lot, made some good money, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
And that's what's important too. It's cool that you went from answering an ad to make some money to doing an angle that you're saying is, that was really fun in the end.
What?
Are you still friends with Billy Gunn?
Absolutely.
Cool.
I spoke with him. He called me not too long ago, but he wanted me to come in and work with him recently. And I don't want to wrestle anymore. I appreciated the offer. It was, I guess he had there was some angle they were doing, something about a birthday. I guess he's managing some guys over there. I don't watch wrestling.
His sons. Yeah, no, he's managing his well, no, he's managing.
He's with the Acclaim now.
Acclaimed, yeah, but his sons are there too. So it's those.
Yeah. We don't talk every day, but Billy and I have the kind of relationship where we won't talk for a year and a half, 2 years, and then it's like we never missed a beat. You know what I mean? So,
really cool.
Yeah. I can't believe he's still doing it. He's like,
looks great. Yeah.
He's durable. I mean, because he's going to be coming in on 60, right?
Yeah. At this point, yeah. And now he's getting in there with his sons and everything too. It's so cool to see the full circle. I haven't seen his sons. Since they were kids, but they were good kids. I'm sure they're doing great, right? Yeah, they are. They're definitely excelling. And it's cool. AEW in general, it's just a great breeding ground for new stars that wouldn't always get the opportunity. Maybe for Chuck. One more thing about that angle, the theme song. Do you remember the theme song?
Yeah, you look so good to me.
Yeah. Do you remember how that theme song came about? Because they've used it past that too. And also your personal opinion. Did you like that theme song?
It's so funny because when I first heard it, no, I was going, what? Oh my, it was so over the top, and it was
Yeah.
so flamboyant, but it worked. It was perfect. That's why, that's why those people who, put those songs together, that's why they get paid to do what they do. It worked. And I just found it entertaining. Like I said at the beginning, I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh man, but then after a few times down to the ring, it was cool. We had fun with it. At one point, I remember I'd be hopping around on one foot and doing all this, but it just worked,
Yeah.
But yeah, I was good with it. I don't know who. I think at the time, I can't remember the gentleman's name. There was a guy who worked for WWF, WWE. He did all the music.
Was
Tim
it
Johnson?
Jim Johnston?
Jim Johnston, yeah.
Jim Johnson. I think he put it together. But yeah, it worked.
It worked. Yeah, it's definitely memorable. Nick, did you watch that?
Oh my God, yeah. It's funny that he mentions all that. Because I remember playing SmackDown Shut Your Mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come out and I would just get so irritated because for some reason at least Billy was really hard to beat. And actually Chuck and SmackDown, the first SmackDown versus Raw was hard to beat. But yeah, I remember that's about the time I started watching wrestling. And being a kid, I thought it was funny. I thought it was great. I didn't know what same-sex marriage or relationship. I was 12, 13 years old. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, it's just so crazy just thinking about that time of wrestling and how different it was and how captivating it was. Because to be honest, there's hundreds of tag teams, and there's only a handful that you really remember. And Billy and Chuck to this day is one of them. It's one of those tag teams that they were so charismatic that 20 years later, I remember him skipping around on one foot and the dancing that they would do on the way to the ring. Like, I remember all of that. And that was 20 years ago. And then you have teams from 5 years ago. It's like, oh, I forgot they were a team. It's one of those things where the entertainment value that you can bring, you don't need the moves. You just need something that stands out. You just need something that will captivate an audience and you'll be remembered forever.
Chuck, to give it to you a specific. So when you came into the WWE from WCW, you came in attacking the Hardy Boys. And I'm curious if you had a lot of interaction with the Hardys or Jeff in particular as you went on. That's a selfish question for me. Jeff has always been a favorite of mine. And I'm just curious if you had any interaction.
So yeah, I remember that night. I think it was MSG. Was it MSG when we came in and attacked them?
I think it was, yeah.
I think like half their locker room chased us out into the street, right? Out of the ring, and I think we got our asses kicked all the way out of the building, if I remember correctly. But anyway, Hardy Boys, yeah, obviously, icons in the game. Jeff, I just always liked Jeff. Was just a nice guy, obviously ahead of his time for what he was doing. Jeff was special. He had that, he had that thing. The fans gravitated towards him, Fans gravitated towards him. He had that thing. People liked him. So yeah, we were always, we didn't hang out, but we were definitely friendly, behind the scenes. We would chat about different things, but he's just always easy to get along with kind of guy. And Matt was too, but Jeff, I don't know. I took a liking to Jeff, good guy.
That's awesome. As I think a lot of people probably did. Yeah, he seemed to just like a laid back guy.
Yeah.
As we start to wind it down, get into the later parts of your career, Chuck, and also Nick, I want to get to this. Nasty Nic Nolan, can you explain where the nasty comes into play? You said your character is basically just you. It's not a character, but so explain Nasty Nic Nolan to us. I'm curious.
Man, it's funny you say that because I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, who am I? You know,
that easy to answer question.
What is this life that we're in, man? You know, but I would say for me, I'm still trying to figure it out. But if I really dissect and really think about what I am and who my goal is to make it to WWE. And I will do anything I have to do to get there. You know, and if that means I have to hurt you, it's not personal, it's business. But if I have to hurt you and take you out to move up a rung on that ladder, I'm going to do that. You know, and I'm not a very traditional wrestler. I use the ring as a weapon. It's not illegal. It's part of the ring.
As Brian Kendrick does better than anyone, I think, by the way.
Yep. And that's one of those things that I just pick his brain on, and we come up with things together of what would be cool, what makes sense, why I'm doing it. And that's one of those things in his last run, something as simple as sticking your fingers in it's not the things that you twist on the turnbuckle. It's like this, sticking your fingers in there and pulling them back. Little things like that. It's not illegal, but it's fucked up. You know,
the neck breaker he gives to Ibushi on that thing that you turn is, I still remember that spot, and that's, I don't know, 20, what is that, 17?
17 something. Yeah. I just watched that match the other day.
Classic. I watched it years ago, and I still remember that spot. Yeah, so it's one, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's honestly one of my favorite matches ever. Now, I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with Brian. I'm saying that because I'm able to understand that match. You know, I remember that spot specifically. I was like, why did you do that? He had neck surgery. It's a simple, he had neck surgery. So I'm trying to break his neck. Yep.
Psychology. Something as simple as that, you know? And that's where the commentators come in and be like, oh, his surgically repaired neck. He's doing this, he's doing that. But you remember something like that, you know, as opposed to a random match on Raw where someone does a 450 splash and that's the finish of the match. Okay, that's your finisher. Cool. I don't remember that, but I remember something grotesque as breaking fingers or twisting twerking a neck on a turnbuckle. That's just me. But yeah, to go back to your question, I'm really tunnel vision for WWE. I have an idea of what I need to do, because I spoke with my coaches, and they both said the same thing in different words, but literally the same thing. So for me personally, WWE today could change tomorrow.
Yeah,
are not looking for independent wrestlers. You know, they want football players. They want someone who has 20 million followers on TikTok for whatever reason. The way I have to go about it, you know, I asked Seth Rollins, like, what do I have to do? You know, I can do A, B, C, and D. You have to go somewhere else, whether it's AEW, NWA, Impact, New Japan, whatever.
Get on their radar.
That's when WWE is going to notice you.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, you know, because they have their eyes on who they want for their company. But just like Cody Rhodes leaving, just like Drew McIntyre leaving, if you can make them go like this and watch you over there, they're going to want you, whether you fit their mold or not. That's the route I have to take. So, yes, the end goal is WWE, obviously. But who knows? I may show up in NWA sooner rather than later. You know, I may show up in AEW sooner rather than later. But at the end of the day, the goal is to make money. It's show business, you know. So whoever's willing to pay, I'm willing to work. Whoever's willing to pay is without a doubt getting the best diamond in the rough right now. Because realistically, in the grand scheme of wrestling, I'm this big.
Yeah. But
I know as time progresses, it's going to get bigger and bigger, because I know no one can touch me on that microphone. I know that for a fact. And once more people see it, they know they're getting a deal. They're going to bring me in. I'm going to make my money. Once that contract's up, you're going to make even more money. Whoever wants to shell out that money talks. I'm willing to listen. So, you know, I grew up like most independent wrestlers say, I want to be in WWE. Me specifically, I want to be WWE champion. How I have to do, what I have to do to get there, I may have to hurt people. That's fine. I may have to stab people in the back. That's fine. Doesn't really matter to me, because all that matters to me is, one, my bank account, two, achieving that childhood dream that I set out in Madison Square Garden in 2003. So the nasty comes in the attitude, nasty comes in the ring work, nasty comes in what spews out of my mouth during a promo. Yeah, because one thing that I've learned with promos is no one is going to believe you unless there's some sort of truth in there. Where that truth lies, I'm not going to tell you, but every promo I cut, there is truth. Yeah. And that's, I feel, for me, I'm not Billy Gunn. I'm not 6'6", 300 pounds. That guy's big. Where I'm going to get the attention is on the microphone. I'm not the best wrestler. I know that. There's people who can out wrestle me, and that's perfectly fine. But there is nobody, and I really believe this. This is where the truth comes in. Mm-hmm. I really believe this. There is nobody who can cut a better promo than me. So, like I said, they just signed a deal with CW, I believe it was. You may turn on CW, see me in NWA, because I know they're doing a territory thing, and I'm out in Chicago. So I might do that. Yeah. I might show up in AEW, I can show up in Impact. Whoever wants me, I'm willing to listen, but keep in mind, when you have a good product, you have to pay, and whoever is willing to pay, that's where I'll be.
A very succinct answer. I love the confidence too. Chuck, do you have any thoughts on what Nick just said?
No, I think confidence is great. If that's how you feel, just go out there and where you can get the exposure and show them what you can do. Like you said, start working in one of those territories, or AEW or NWA. Is NWA going strong now?
Yeah, dude, NWA is making a big comeback. I mean, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think during COVID, they came back on YouTube and The Rock put them over. And that's when people started watching again. Billy Corgan owns NWA now. And they just signed a deal with CW, who I believe is the 19th biggest station in the country, which, if you put it in perspective, TNT and TBS is like 17 and 18. Wow. And that's what AEW is. Mm-hmm. So NWA being number 19, they're right up there. So they're making a big push now. They have incredible talent. Someone who I've worked and I've developed a friendship with. We may not see eye to eye in real life or in that ring, but Koa Laksamana, he's very, very talented, and he's doing a lot with NWA now. And he's someone who has his pulse on the business, and he is someone who, and Khalees, his girlfriend, his manager, great minds, and I love working with him. But NWA is making a big comeback. I know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see someone like Arn Anderson show back up, because I think his contract with AEW just finished and he didn't resign. They may pull Ric Flair out of somewhere, you never know. And you never know. You could see Cody Rhodes back there eventually. So NWA is right up there. They're making a big push in 2024. So who knows? They may pass AEW if all goes well. No one's going to touch WWE anytime soon, but at least there are options now for people like me who, up until AEW was created, it was either WWE or, Sure. So that's I'm glad I got into the wrestling when I did, because I started in 2012, but I didn't actually wrestle and do shows until last December or so. Mm-hmm. So it's perfect timing for me, because now there are more options. Had I started 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and nothing happened, I could just be done. I could just be like, oh, it didn't work out. WWE didn't sign me. There's nowhere else to go. Yeah. But at least now there's 3, 4, even Impact. Impact is still relevant. Impact just had a big show in Chicago last week.
Oh, where? Right.
Yeah. Was it Bound for Glory? I think so.
That was their last big year. It's like their WrestleMania. No, I mean, wrestling is crazy right now, the popularity.
It
It's
is
very
hot right
high.
And it's so nice knowing for everybody. And I'm not just speaking for me. I'm talking about everybody because there are so many people who are talented out there who WWE may not have their eye on right now, but you give them a platform in NWA, Impact, AEW, they're going to have eyes looking at them. And that's the most important thing is the exposure. So if you can get the exposure where you can, and then if your goal is WWE and they look at you, that is such a blessing. And now is a time to get into wrestling because, like I said, even the small independent companies have their own YouTube channels.
Yes.
Who have thousands of, like House of Glory in New York.
It's huge. I know.
Like hundreds of thousands of subscribers for an independent wrestling company.
And I mean,
which is unheard of.
It's a great time. Chuck, if I could just throw it to you to get to the end of your career now in WWE, when you were your biker. Now, I've heard you say this character was more of you, or at least like the image was you, the motorcycle, maybe not so much the character. But can you get into like that character and how it was to shift to that after Billy and Chuck and getting back into WWE?
Yeah. So, it was, I guess, I mean, I'm into motorcycles, I'm into Harleys and choppers, so I guess it was kind of, more towards the real me. But honestly, so I signed a 2-year deal in 06, and I knew just the way, you remember 08, right? 2008 was we had a big decline in the business, right?
Yeah.
The economy tanked.
Yeah,
real estate market tanked. It was a tough time. But I knew my days were numbered. I really did. Just knowing the business, knowing where I was in the business, I knew my time was probably close to being up. And so honestly, I went to Vince with that character. I showed him. I think I want to say I showed him some magazines that had recently featured my builds, and explained to him what I kind of wanted to do, and he was all for it. I knew I wasn't going to be there much longer, and I knew I was transitioning to building bikes full time.
Yeah.
The last few years in wrestling, I had been buying equipment and getting my shop outfitted and stuff like that. And when I was home on my days off, I was working on bikes, building bikes and stuff like that. So that's what it was for me. It was more to get some exposure.
Yeah.
Towards the end of my, that kind of TV exposure is priceless, right? So that was more of it for me, The character itself didn't so the way it started off and the way it ended up really wasn't I had no control over that. I started working with Taker's wife, McCool, and it was kind of a distasteful.
Yeah, I remember.
To me at that point, like the being the psycho and being violent towards women and stuff like that. I get
that's
character, but
not where you wanted to go. Not your image.
Yeah, and it's not really something I wanted to do, but I did it. I'm getting paid to do something. I do it. But yeah, honestly, I was just really looking at the future at that point. I had fun. I had fun with it, but I was really looking at the future.
Absolutely, it was very smart. I think I saw you wearing like your shirt.
That's what I used to do. I used to wear my shop shirts with the website on it.
That's super smart. Yeah, I mean like you said, the TV exposure it's priceless. You mentioned Undertaker. I think the only other wrestler to come out on a motorcycle was Undertaker, or at least you're in an elite group, maybe.
I think as far as singles, I know there was I don't know if Legion of Doom or I don't know if they did it for a little while back in the day. And I want to say who were the twins? They were in WCW, two big guys, nice guys.
Was it the Gemini?
Was it the Gemini? The Gemini.
They were. They went to. You remember the Gemini, Nick?
I do. They were around for like 2 or 3 months or something. They were with Simon Dean, I think, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember, man. But I think as far as a single character that the bike was used every week, I think I was the only other one to do it besides Taker, as far as the bike being a big part of the character. You know what I mean?
And a lot of I've seen people say, "Oh, it's just like American Badass Taker." That was the fans. Did you actually ever hear anything from Undertaker though about it, like himself, like a
No,
comment?
he was totally cool with it because he was. You know, it's so funny because in real life, Taker had a bike for a little while, but he's not really into bikes, believe it or not. You know, because I've known him for a long time. He knew what I like. You know, he knew I liked bikes. He knew what my plans were. I think in the future, so he was good with it. But yeah, you know, you always get the. I don't pay attention. You know, you remember like when I was in the business, the internet really wasn't like all this stuff that they have now, and I was out in '08,
Yeah,
so there was no social media really, was there? I mean, what was going on in '08? Was there Facebook maybe? I don't even know. But
maybe like early stages. Yeah, something.
yeah, so I don't really. It wasn't like they had what they have now. You know what I mean? So, but you know, I'd heard from guys like, "Oh, yeah, that's like a Undertaker ripoff or whatever." And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about my future. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's kind of how that worked out. But
it's cool. It was a
yeah,
cool way to go out. That's because I feel like you span generations like that. Like I'm 25. I started watching probably like 2007, and that's about what I remember of Chuck Palumbo. Like that's what I knew you best for
yeah,
growing up. So, but then of course people knew you from WCW and everything. So it's cool. It was a cool
yeah,
like to go out on. It was memorable.
yeah. I got for me, like I said, I never was a top guy. Um, and that really was, it would have been nice if it had played out that way. But for me, it was like the experience. I got to wrestle in WCW around and be around all those legends of the game, right? And then I got to go to WWF with all those legends. And then I was there for the buyout. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Prior to going to WWF, I was there for that buyout. That was the most real thing that had ever happened in the industry to this day. Vince buying WCW and basically live on television, doing our last show down in Florida. Um, it was just having Shane come into the locker room, having not ever met him before and saying, "Hey, we bought you guys, and here's what you're doing tonight." I mean, to be part of the business during that time, that was an incredible time to be in the business. So I just feel like I've been just so fortunate to see so many different eras in such a short, basically my TV career for the most part. I'm not talking about independence or working in Japan later on and stuff like that, or Europe, but just my like TV career in the States, WCW, WWF, WWE. It was only 10 years, total. You know what I mean? But I
Right.
saw so much in those 10 years.
It's really crazy. It was only 10 years. Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
definitely made an impact, and you've given some great advice so far to Nick. Final question: any lasting words of wisdom? Maybe something you wish you heard earlier on in your career, or anything for Nick as he continues his.
I'd say first and foremost, take care of your body and your mind, right? So we're finding out now, unfortunately, that there's a lot of guys who have suffered from CTE and different things like that. It's a lot of things. It's not talked about a lot, but it's inevitable, right? It's going to happen to some of the guys, and so I'd say definitely take care of your mind and your body. Um, Take care of you. You know what I mean? Number one. I mean, I think it's wonderful when people have dreams and goals. You have to. They're definitely attainable. You like, Nick, you can do this. It'll happen. But take care of yourself. I wouldn't sacrifice what you believe in for the business. Um, I would take the business, use it as a business, as a tool, and take what you can get from it. Obviously, have fun, make it a great experience. Um, and I just think at the end of the day, always remember, and a lot of times early on, and I had this problem myself. I think a lot of the young guys do coming in. You really got to remember it's a business. Early on coming in, I just wanted to be part of the show. I just wanted to be one of the boys, but I quickly learned that it was a business. So just take care of yourself first, Think about your future. Like I said, and that goes not only from a business standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint, as far as what you're putting your body through physically. Yeah, that's really it, man. And then just again, you got to give it 100 in that business, especially. You got to give it 110% all the time. And that doesn't mean in the ring, but just with your efforts, getting the exposure, the traveling, working on the promos like you're working on. Give it 110%.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Because you've been where I want to be, and I always try to pick brains of people who have done what I want to do. And what would you suggest as far as taking care of your body? What would you do to take care of your body? Because the nagging injuries and the joints and all that stuff. What did you do to take care of that?
Of course, we worked out and we ate well and stuff like that, but I was never a big heavy weightlifter, to tell you the truth. I was more or less a stay in shape kind of guy. I wasn't trying to be jacked and all that stuff. I was more about trying to just stay durable and, trying to, look the part aesthetically, because that's what Vince wanted at the time. You know what I mean? But what's funny is, I don't know if you follow football at all, but I look at like a Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
He was a longtime quarterback for the Patriots and stuff like that. Guy's never had any major injuries. Doesn't have a ton of muscle on him. Focuses more on yoga-like things, than he does heavyweight. Now you gotta be strong. You gotta work out and stuff like that. You gotta do your conditioning, obviously. But I would, these days, knowing what we know now about the bodies and how everything works and what works, I take a look at Tom Brady, man, what he's doing. The yoga. It sounds funny, but the yoga, the stretching. I think he actually has a book out. I was with my buddy's house the other day, and he showed me a book. He has a book on it too, but just about longevity, right?
Yeah.
And don't put any garbage in your body. We've seen the guys who put garbage in their bodies along the years, and those guys aren't with us anymore, or they have major health problems. So
yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Because I always love learning about different approaches to certain things, and I've heard a lot, because I don't do it as often as I should, but I do stretch, and that seems to help a lot. In yoga, with the whole DDP yoga thing from 10 years ago, whatever it is, prolonging everyone's life and careers. You hear amazing things about things like that. So it's good to see that seems to be like a universal answer across the board from everybody. So that's I appreciate you being honest and transparent with that, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing is just, quickly, is that don't bump unless you have to. There's no need to practice bump. Once you know how to bump, that's it. Only bump when you're getting paid to bump, when it means something. A lot of us didn't know what kind of toll it was going to take on our bodies. I've been very fortunate, but I know a lot of guys who haven't been. So don't bump unless you have to. You know what I mean? When it's time, and make it worth it.
Oh, you don't got to tell me twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, because and once you learn your moves, you know your moves. So there's no need to be putting your body through that kind of stuff, practicing and stuff like that. Once you get them down, obviously stay polished, but take care of your body.
Yeah. Actually, quick question. Now that we're talking about this, how would you, in a situation where you're not comfortable taking something, approach that? Because you don't want to just be like, I'm not going to take that, because then you have heat and all that comes with it. But how would you, if you're not comfortable doing something? And I always hear, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's your body, it's your career. If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
But you also have to be cognizant of how people react to how you say certain things. So what would you do in a situation like that?
Well, I can only tell you what I've done, and what I've done in the past is I've exactly what you said. I've just said, hey, listen, I'd love to do it, but I don't feel comfortable with it. More importantly, if I don't feel comfortable with it, I don't feel comfortable that I can be safe with you, meaning your opponent, right? I've always approached it that way, where if I don't feel comfortable with something, yeah, I don't feel comfortable for my own good, but also for my opponent or the guy I'm working with. I don't want to hurt you. That's how I've kind of approached it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta if you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. Or if it's something that's high risk that you don't think is worth it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you both so much, and so generous with your time too. I appreciate it. But that finishes off for the interview. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
This was.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really, Chuck, man, this is cool because I grew up watching you on TV, and it's just, I'm still a little kid at heart when it comes to this stuff. So it fills me with, that's corny as it sounds, it fills me with joy to be able to pick the mind of someone I grew up watching or get to know someone, things like that. So it's really cool. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you guys having me on. And then, Nick, I appreciate your enthusiasm and what you're doing. Keep it up, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interview.